Thank you for being here. We are starting to do these weekly Zooms, and this is our second one. We are recording. For anyone who's not, I know most everyone's familiar with webinars and with Zoom, but with webinars, you are not, you are not on camera at all. There's not, unless I invite you in to be a panelist, your camera doesn't show up at all. It's not activated. I'd love to know in the chat where people are from. Last week, we had at least half of our attendees or more that weren't local. They were from other states. And of course, we love gathering locally, but not everybody can do that. So it's kind of fun to see where people are coming from. So if you want to, you don't have to be very specific. Oh, we have a few people. Good. Thank you. And maybe, we're going to have some of these where we have a lot of people that do feel a little more local. Either way, we're just glad you're here. Hopefully we can figure out where these are going to live. We will take the recordings and we'll put them online so people can have access to that. If we say something so profound, you need to go back and look again. That's awesome. Or if you miss a week and want to catch up, hopefully we'll have those available for you. So welcome. I want to go through a few announcements and then we'll turn the meeting over to Sara Call and we'll go from there. For anyone who doesn't know, my name is Sara Urquhart. I am a co-founder of TDA, the Divine Assembly, and I will be managing these Zooms for the next little while. If not forever, we'll just see where it goes. And so a few announcements. First of all, we have the Moon Fest this weekend. And anything I named that I talk about right now, I'm not going to go grab those links right now, but I will put all these things in the chat. So if anything sounds interesting to you, the Moon Fest is an overnighter at the Dell. It's happening this Saturday. We're bringing out DJs and playing and having music go on at least till 4 a.m. And then you can camp, you can sleep, car camp, tent camp, whatever you'd like. There are tickets available. It's a $30 ticket. So I will throw that link in the chat as soon as I turn the meeting over to Sara. The other thing I want to give you a heads up on is next week, this meeting, we're going to have a woman named Erica. She's from a group called Shine Collective, and they're a nonprofit in the psychedelic space that focuses on safety. And where some people think there might be some gray lines or gray areas, her nonprofit group really tries to establish some bright neon flashing lines so that people aren't confused about what's appropriate, what's not appropriate when we're altered or when other people are altered. So that's going to be a really interesting conversation. And if you have any questions about safety, that's going to be one you want to make sure you see, either joining us live or catching the link and watching it after. So I just want to make sure everyone knew about that. These meetings are a little more interesting when we are active in the chat. So if there are questions that you have that are just kind of for the general public, or, hey, tell me about this, what is that? Then go ahead and put them in the chat and feel free to answer if you think you know the answer to a question someone's asking. If you have a question specifically for Sara Call, go ahead and put it in the Q&A, and we will we'll get to those probably at the end of the meeting. We'll go for a little while and then we'll stop and do some questions. So put them there. If you need a clarification about something she has just said, and it makes more sense to have it answered right there, you can put it in the chat and put it in all caps. That way I'll see it and Sarah might see it. If she doesn't, I'll go ahead and jump in and ask that question, that clarifying question for you. So two places that you can put those questions. If it's immediate, I'm going to say it again. If it's immediate, put it in the chat. If it's for the end of the meeting, put it in the Q&A box at the bottom. And we'll get to as many of those as we can. So one of the things I do want to do just before I introduce Sarah, I want to start doing something in these meetings that I'm calling altered activities, things that are kind of fun to do when you're altered. And I have a crazy movie buff who's in the space. She's going to give me some movies, either older movies or current movies that people can see. There are definitely going to be other kinds of activities, other music events. A number of them are going to be focused in Salt Lake in Utah. So I'm sorry to anyone who's not here, but maybe it's just an excuse. Maybe it's me trying to lure you here to be a part of our face-to-face community. So the first one I want to talk about is it is local. So that's why I was prefacing. It's local. It's at Salt Lake Acting Company. And full disclosure, I'm on the board there. So I have my season tickets. It's a professional, for those of you who aren't here or don't know about it, it's a professional acting company that's in an old Mormon church, a 120-year-old Mormon church. It's this lovely building, and this acting company has been there for 50 years. And every summer, they do an irreverent original play that's kind of a love letter to Utah. And it's I say love letter, but it's the good and the bad. It makes fun of all the crazy stuff that makes it impossible to live in Utah, but then they throw in all the things we love about living here. If you are irreverent, if you have a good sense of humor, if you hate the chaos of the conservative legislature, then this is a good play for you. I've seen it twice already. I am laughing with tears. It's just so silly and so much fun. This year it's called The Secret Lives of the Real Wives in the Salt Lake Hive. And it's just silly and playful. So if you have a chance to go, you should, and grab your tickets. It'll run through August. But I just want people to know about it because I just think it's one of the best plays that they've done in a while of these originals. So I am already seeing a question from Philip asking, will there be a gathering this Sunday at Wallaroos? Yes, there will be. I don't think we often cancel those, occasionally a Christmas Day or something like that, but it's even then we show up to most of those. So yes, there will be one this Sunday. Okay, now I'm watching the clock already, so I'm going to introduce Sara Call. For those of you who don't know Sara, she has been a long time friend of an important member of the Divine Assembly. I met Sara, I'm thinking 3 years ago at Revival is the first time I met her. And she showed up and found this community, and she's been showing up ever since in big, big ways. She organizes our Sunday meetings at Wallaroos, the ones in Salt Lake City. And she has a team of people that work with her, but she's been really the driving force of that. And the reason we're so steady in that is because of Sara. She does guide. She guides mushroom experiences. So she's speaking, of course, from experience with this topic. And she's a big community builder and a friend. And I just love her so much. Her business is called Unbound and Free. And we will throw that link into the chat as well. So you can find her outside of this meeting. And then we've already talked about where questions go. So I'm just going to turn the time over to Sara and as I said before, be as active and participatory in this meeting as you'd like. Oh, Sara, I'm going to say one other thing to the group. So I'll put a few links in. If anybody has an interest in hosting or doing what Sarah's doing, being a part of one of these meetings, one of these Zoom meetups, there is a form we're asking people to fill out. If you are interested, we really want to see a diverse group of people talking about a diverse group of diverse things. So I'll throw that in. And if that sounds good to you, or you think, somebody else who might be interested, share that link. All right. With that said, I'm going to say, Sarah, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. I love TDA so much. I think people just hear me like proselyting almost of how much I love this space. And, just those of you out there that loves us as well, just what can you do to help out TDA? Like the more we do, it's just growing exponentially and it's beautiful. So that's my TDA plug. I'm just going to go ahead and start the way I start almost everything I do. So I'm going to ask everyone to either lower your gaze or close your eyes. And we're just going to take 3 deep grounding breaths together. We're going to inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, hold. And exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, inhale 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold. And exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. And the last one on your own. Just arriving here, just allowing whatever has gone on throughout your day to just kind of be, and that you took the time out of your day for this. So just kind of, gathering your thoughts, gathering yourself back into your body, back into your heart space. And when you're ready, open your eyes and rejoin us. So guiding isn't about fixing people, right? Guiding is about your presence and holding a space for somebody to fix themselves. And I don't even know if we should call it fix, but to find answers for themselves. So today we're going to explore what it means to hold space. I started taking mushrooms when I was 19, so about 23 years ago. And back then it was more like, I had just left the LDS church. And so it was really much for party. And I always had, alcohol was involved and maybe some other substances. So it kind of was like a scary experience in the beginning for me. It wasn't really like spiritual and incredible. Like it had a lot of fun visuals and things, but it also kind of brought in more of a darker energy, as you can imagine, with drinking and things with that. So I kind of put that down. I did that for a few years and then kind of put it down for a few years because I became a mom and decided that I needed to be responsible. And so when I picked it back up, it was very much more in the spiritual way to use these plants. And it changed my life. It really is kind of in our home. We have a joke that where my son calls me Mom 2.0 when that I changed so much when after starting to do mushrooms to heal myself and to change. And so it really has helped me with so much with my anxiety, my depression, so many other things of my life. And so this has definitely been my path, my calling. So I started probably guiding about 15 years ago. And I would now call that Trip City, right? Is where I just would kind of show up for the day for a friend, make sure they were safe, or, maybe I was doing a low dose with them and we were out hiking or something like that. But, mostly just didn't even realize that I was kind of doing that really, just people would ask me to hang out and it always turned into where I've always been good at holding space. And so I just kind of naturally started to do that for others. And that probably is what set me onto this path, for just seeing what people can go through and being there to help felt really incredible to me. So now that I consider myself a full guide, to me that means, and I think, the Divine Assembly, what they, as far as their training courses go. But we kind of do say like trip setting is like the day of, right? It's kind of like you're not really doing intake or integration. You're just there to keep that person safe on that day. And so now as a guide, I do think that it is important that you offer intake session with somebody and maybe even a couple phone calls, just depending on who you are, and also integration. And then the day of, making sure that you've got a nice curated space. So those are kind of the three big parts of being a guide, right? Of having the ability to have an intake with somebody, being there that day of, which the day of can be many hours. We all know it can be, the journey itself can be 6 to 8 hours. And so if you're adding a meal and things like that on top of it, it's a 10-hour day. So, which for me, it's like kind of my favorite thing. And the people that I guide with they love it as well. So it's just a nice day to hang out with each other and be in that energy, in that space. A lot of us consider it our church. It's just a very spiritual experience for us. So, I really appreciate being able to I've been starting to collaborate the last couple of years with guiding with others, and it's really blessed my life so much. So we're going to kind of go through some buzzwords in this space and say and go over what they mean. So set and setting. Set is your mindset, right? Getting somebody prepared, because more often than not, even if they're an experienced person, that they are going to start to feel really nervous. The medicine, I believe, starts speaking to us the minute we commit to that date of showing up to take the medicine, and or the sacrament. So really people can start getting nervous. Your subconscious knows things are about to shift and things are about to change, and its job is to keep you safe. And so, sometimes a lot of things can come into people's way, or they might try and back out a little bit here and there. So those are things I like to call out and bring up during the intake session, and letting them know that you'll probably get a little discomfort. Things might pop into your sphere that normally wouldn't. And so just to be aware of those kind of things to get your mindset right. I love to offer things like breath work and meditation, a couple weeks in advance before the journey, for people to just practice coming back into their body and practice coming back into their heart space and getting out of this place so much, because that's where all of our fear lives, right? So it's really helpful if you can really help somebody in that space for a couple of weeks, especially if they're brand new. If they're brand new, they probably are going to be pretty nervous about this experience. Then setting is where you're going to have the experience the day of. So how you decide to set that up is going to differ depending on who you are and what you do. Some people say no pictures. Some people say, they need it to be dark, or there's a million different ways you can set up the space. But for me, I do a lot of group journeys. And so typically I'm the one setting the space the way that I like to do that. And I usually have an altar available. I let people bring an altar item if they want to put that on there as they journey. But other than that, I'm pretty streamlined. My space is usually pretty just kind of clean, not a whole lot going on in there. Just enough space for people to put their mats and their pillows and blankets. And, of course, garbage cans, things like that, that'll help you out. But I don't like to have a ton of things in the room because of the way I guide is that I'm very loose, right? Like, I'm not a person that makes people stay on their mat. I'm very much like, if your body is telling you to get up and move, then you're going to get up and move. If if you're rolling around on the floor, you might bump into somebody, or you might, knock something over if I had those things there. So I'm very cautious of really making sure the room is pretty much empty outside of our altar and maybe a few things, for us guides to use during the ceremony. But if I'm doing a one-on-one, then that space is completely curated to the person. And usually it's at their space, their house or something. And so it's very easy to accommodate that and make that happen. But I do love to offer that as a service because, when you're there to do some deep work and you just want to be alone and you don't want others around you, that really is telling you that take the time to set up that space. Like, that really is important because you're going in to do this deep work on yourself. And the more things that you have around you that make you feel comfortable and loved and, maybe even compassionate towards yourself can be very helpful for you to have a meaningful journey. So I think the three kind of essential things for holding space is, the first one is just a grounded presence, just the ability to stay calm and neutral, regulated, your nervous system's regulated, even when someone else isn't. So, sometimes in these ceremonies, people aren't just quiet. Sometimes they can have a really intense experience, and that can manifest into screaming, or thrashing around, kicking, hitting, um, anger. It can be so different. Things that I have never really experienced myself in a journey, but I've seen come out of people multiple times. And so really the ability to just for you to be the one who stays calm, you to be the one to remember that you have nothing to do with this. You're holding a strong container and that is their healing and whatever they're going through that is meant to happen for them. I truly do believe that. Um, tips for staying calm are just like breathe with them. If somebody's kind of like hyperventilating, you're going to slow your breath down and you're going to get kind of close to them and you're going to breathe deep and release deeply, and you're just going to slow them down, calm them down. The next thing that is really important is to just like be non-interference, right? Like letting the medicine do the work. A lot of times, when people are fighting the drop-in, we call it, when people are fighting dropping into the medicine, they start talking a lot. And they, a lot of things are coming through and they just want to talk, talk, talk. And that is typically a sign that they're fighting that medicine. And so it's important to just kind of say things like, it's time to go inward. Remember, we talked about this. It's time for you to put your mask on and take some time for yourself. Like things that we've talked about beforehand, because those things do come up. And that is a really great way. If they're asking a lot of questions, just say, hey, ask the medicine, what is it trying to tell you? And we're not there to fix or interpret for them. So sometimes they'll ask you straight up, questions, and it would be very hard not to answer those sometimes. A lot of people like myself found this space. I've been a coach before. And so it was really hard for me to not interfere and bring that training into this work, because in some ways, like in integration, that training can help me a lot. But during the actual experience, it is just me to like zip up my mouth, stay quiet, for most of the time, right? Like every once in a while if we go into the journey in a different way, like maybe somebody does need to talk and they're one-on-one, then that's the experience we're going for. But most of the time we're there to just have the experience with the medicine, let it come through us. So I just remind them to go back in, ask the medicine what they need to do. I try really hard not to answer their questions. Things like saying like, I'm just right here if you need me, stuff like that. So the other thing is, your safety, your consent, and your boundaries. So before every ceremony, we always talk about touch, right? Some guides don't touch. I do. I feel like touching is very important for me when I'm in the medicine, and I really like to offer that to others. And so we talk about that. For me, it's from the shoulders down, from the knees down, and then if you need a hug. And then I make everyone go around the room and say yes or no, if they want to be touched or not. So if somebody said no, that they didn't want to be touched, and then during the journey is having a really hard time, that's something we want to bring up to them beforehand, to be like, that wouldn't really be ethical for me to start, to give you a hug or whatever in the medicine if you're telling me beforehand that you're a person that doesn't like to be touched. So we really need to set those expectations with them before anything happens, just to, make sure that you are staying in an ethical space. And
Sara?
Yeah.
Say again what what your rules are. What did you say? Knee down, and what was...
Yeah. So my rules are like from the shoulder down, from the knees down, or if they need a hug.
So shoulder down, you mean on the arms then?
Yeah, just on the arms.
Got it.
And the reason I say that is because sometimes the room is, packed in a weird way that it's hard to get up to hold their hand, or, so you're kind of maybe on their calf or something like that. But
okay.
But really, to me, that is acceptable touch pretty much for everybody. And it doesn't ever get into the weird, you hear a lot of people say cuddle puddle, which, I don't even know if we need to get started on that, but
no,
exactly what it sounds like. People just want to, you feel very loving and kind, and you just want to touch each other, and touch can feel incredible sometimes when you're on the medicine. So,
I am interrupting. I told Sara I wouldn't, but I'm gonna interrupt on this. When I was guiding once, I had somebody who was saying, grab my foot, grab my left foot. And I was like, what is happening here? And then he did it again. And at first I'm like, okay. Second time I'm like, is this a kink? What is happening? And afterward, because I didn't know this person well yet. And afterwards, he said, no, sometimes when I asked him about it, he said, sometimes when go on psychedelics, he said, it's happened with LSD and then it happened with a deep mushroom trip. He said, something about my left foot just cramps up. And when I grabbed it, he was able to kind of deal with it. But it took the pain away. But it was such a funny request that I was like, what is this? What is happening? And I am glad I responded instead of being too judgy, but that was just such a funny thing to me. I've never had someone be that specific. My left foot.
Oh, that is specific. And then he probably couldn't tell you that he was cramping, right? So
He couldn't tell me in the moment, but we're friends now, 3 years later, and I still make fun of him. I think it's hilarious that happened. That's all.
I love that. No, that's good. I think the touch is really important to talk about because, we see a lot of people in this spiritual space that are having a lot of non-consensual and inappropriate touch going on in ceremonies. And, so that's just something to really be aware of if you're feeling into getting a guide or becoming a guide, is just being very adamant about what you're going to offer. And, make sure that your journeyers are, your participants are understanding that wholly and fully. So I might also do I do send around a waiver for people as well. So, just to kind of get them in the right headspace. I've had, really big men, man thinking he was God and could walk through a wall. And if I didn't have other guides there with me, I'm like, I don't know if I could have handled him. He was very big. And so he could have, destroyed some of somebody's house. So just really the waiver kind of just helps people to get their mindset right. They know, that they are liable for things. If you send it around right before ceremony, it just kind of helps get them in the right mindset of what they can and can't do as well in the medicine. Yeah, so just set your expectations, safety, letting people know. Like for me, phones are a must to take away. It could be really dangerous. I get guide with Nick sometimes, and he likes to say a lot like, what if your water heater started leaking and you got a text message? And that's a really great note to say because that's so true. If you're going to start freaking out and there's nothing you can do because you're under the medicine, and if you're the guide, then you're trying to take care of somebody who's freaking out and trying to leave, and it just is really intense. And I don't have that exact situation happen, but I've definitely had people try to leave, and that can be an intense feeling when you're like, remember you agreed to stay here, and sometimes they are adamant that they need to go. And so taking phones away is really important, I think, as a safety issue. As well as, we all know that it makes their journey just so much better to not have electronics around. So getting their consent and then sticking with your boundaries. I've definitely had people try to kiss me or try to touch me inappropriately. And again, that is just, we're open, we're in this loving zone. And so just kind of talking to them like, hey, that's inappropriate touch. And I use those exact words. And usually they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, but it will just kind of help you to be direct and to the point, even if they're in the medicine. So the biggest thing I think about guiding is to remember that you just have to make it through those 6 hours, right? Like even if their journey goes a little bit longer, they're not going to be in that intense situation. So sometimes people have a hard time relaxing into the medicine and letting the default mode network be offline, right? The safety network. And I've seen it to where like it's the full 5 to 6 hours where they're just like, I want to be done. I want to be done. Can I go home? I want to be done. Like over and over and over, repetitive like that for hours. And that was, those are some of the hardest ones for me because what do you do? You're like, you took the medicine. You have to be here for this amount of time. You agreed to it. Try to go inward and you do everything you can, but they're still just fighting it so wholeheartedly because they've never really, dissociated from their body or had that kind of experience at all. And so it feels so foreign to them. And so just remembering that you just have to last for that amount of time. There are a couple things that I do like to use for people. Before a journey, I offer the L-theanine, which is a new thing that came into my life this last year, but it is really good to help people just calm down straight from the beginning. right? It's just an amino acid. It's relatively inexpensive. And so if you just kind of have that in your arsenal, it's helpful for people. And then I also try and talk about that in intake so that they're aware of it. They can look it up on their own, see if it's something they want to have. It's not mandatory at all. It just is really helpful. Um, and then the other thing is the activated charcoal. So if you do have somebody that just will not stop, like whatever it is they're doing, and mostly like you can't handle it, right? Like if you can handle it and you can keep shutting them down or bringing them back to where they need to be back to, then I don't use the charcoal. But if somebody, if I can handle it, then I make them stay on their journey because I do believe that whatever's happening for them is happening for them for a reason. But if it's like where you've had it and they are ready to just be done, then you can use the charcoal and that will start to work within 20 minutes or so. So just know that that is like the one thing that I've found that can help. But, again, I only use it if I'm the one that can't handle it and not them. So just remembering that if you decide to do this for somebody and they are a person that, has a behavior that is really hard for you, then you just need to keep coming back to yourself and breathing yourself and reminding, putting yourself in a good place, calming your own nervous system down. And that usually will help them to feel that, because when we're in the medicine, we can feel each other's energies really strongly. And so if maybe if you showed up in an energy that had some tension or something like that, they're going to feel that from you. And that can cause kind of a hard situation as well. Let's see. So I did want to kind of talk about, so at the end of this, I'm going to talk to you about the needing, like if you wanted to join this program. Sorry, my words are not coming to me very fast. But part of that I like to talk about is, needing the certificate, right? Like we are in a patriarchal society, and I really want to just touch on that. I do offer the certificate, like it's just a certificate of completion. I'm not accredited or anything like that. We use the Divine Assembly's online program, but I just want you all to know that if you're feeling called to this work, that it really is for you. And if you don't feel like you need training, maybe you don't, but you definitely need to know like the safety things. So we're going to go through that, but I want you to kind of challenge yourself on that certificate approach, right? Like I've done a million certifications, so I'm not judging anyone because I've done a million things. I love to learn. But it really took me looking at my own shit to realize like sometimes I was chasing a certificate versus chasing the learning and stuff like that. So I just kind of wanted to put that in there, that if you are somebody that already holds space for somebody that, maybe that you don't need that program, but if you want it, that's a whole different thing. But just to like really kind of center yourself on that and bring your strengths out of yourself, because we all are pretty good at holding space. Just kind of depends on the arena you choose to play in. Actually, I think I want to look at, do we have any questions? Yeah.
We have
Okay.
one question.
Okay.
Somebody asks, I'm curious how many people you have in your group journeys. And then a question about, are there other facilitators working alongside you?
Yeah. I usually am a small group person. So I'm usually, I cap it usually around 12, and typical range is going to be 8 to 10. The space that I have is up to 16, but I haven't gone that far yet. But I'm also super guide heavy, which is awesome. So usually we'll have anywhere from 4 to 5 guides in the room. And sometimes, there's barely more participants than there are guides. But that just gives people the experience of, the guides, the experience of guiding more, and the participants an experience to have more one-on-one interaction. So I think that I really do see in this space a lot where people are like there might be one guide or maybe two, and they've got like 12, 15 people. And I just think that even like 6 to 8, like that's just a lot for 2 people, people. I think that that's dangerous. I think that you don't get the help that you need if you need help. And usually those of us that are going to a guide, want that help for that. Even me, when I still get guides when I'm going through something really big and hairy, and I really want their attention, right? Like that's why I'm there. And so I feel like for me that really helps me to make sure that I am staying in alignment with what I'm wanting as well. So
I have some questions. Somebody in the chat asked, have you worked with other medicines than mushrooms?
Yes.
And do you think there are different considerations for other medicines versus mushrooms? So handle both of those, and then I've got some others as well.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely have. There are many other considerations for other medicines. For example, you'll find a lot in the space where people will mix MDMA with mushrooms. And that's something that I did used to do, but have been called more to just more like chemical free path for my life and my body. And as well as I've been called to accept people that are on pharmaceuticals. And so um MDMA has a lot more contraindications than psilocybin does. And so that didn't make sense to me to always have to do that work and be worried about it. And so now I don't offer MDMA, but that would be something, a whole different experience to go through. From what I've researched and seen, LSD is kind of the same rules as mushrooms is. And so like when you're kind of learning that stuff, they both kind of are on that serotonin network. You got to look at things like your SSRIs and SNRIs, stuff like that. But other medicines like, ayahuasca is supposed to be no pharmaceuticals. Like everything kind of has its own thing. So you just kind of need to research what you're wanting to do and definitely make sure that the guide can answer all of your questions. And um,
So is that part of your intake, Sarah? Do you ask what meds they're on, and then do you do some of that research for them, or do you expect them to do it?
Yeah, no, I actually do all of that research for all their medications because feel like that's on my shoulders at that point. And I want to keep them safe and I want to make sure they actually can drop in because sometimes, if somebody's on the laundry list of pharmaceuticals, they're going to have a hard time dropping in at 15 grams, which is unheard of for most of us. But it also is kind of like, if you're buying mushrooms, you got to think about that cost and you got to think about is that going to turn into an 8 to 10 hour trip for that person because they're on such a high dose? So yeah, that's definitely an intake question. And I do an online intake because I like to get the pharmaceuticals beforehand and be able to research them before we kind of go through the intake together. So I usually have them fill out a form first and then I call them at a later date.
And when you're doing a journey, when you're are you sober, or who is sober in the experience? How do you usually handle that?
Yeah, no, I usually take a microdose. Most of the guides I guide with take a microdose, but for me, I become very sensitive to mushrooms, and so I'm typically like a point 0.1, 0.25 is the highest I go. There was one time I did a 0.5, and I was like, oh shit. Like I was going right in and I just had to pull, it was really hard, but I had to pull myself out. And, luckily I did have other guides. Don't experiment on your dosage as a guide unless you have other guides there to help you. But luckily I did have other people there and was kind of like, I need a minute. I went in too far. I need to go pull out of this. But yeah, I think that if you are going to experiment with doing that, then definitely have other people there that can help you in case you just go in for whatever reason.
But I want to clarify. You said most. Do you always have a sober person, or is that not something you follow?
It isn't something we follow. It just depends on typically the guide. So the guides that I work with have gone through the guide training program and they're wanting more experience usually. And so they're people that I've sat with in the medicine. I've seen them work with the medicine. And then, so it's up to them if they want to take a dose or not. And typically always, people are like at 0.1 just to kind of get into that same energetic frequency as the rest of the group.
Okay. Have you ever been faced with a situation where you were like, oh, this is, I mean, sort of like the big man walking through the wall or trying to, has there ever been a time when you've thought, oh, this is a little beyond me, or at least what I typically hold space for? I mean, anything like that feels a little like it
Yeah.
stretched you.
Yeah, I can tell two stories really quick. One of them was a person that he was on some pharmaceuticals, so we had to dose him a little bit higher. He started at I think 5 or 6, and then he still wasn't going in, so we gave him another gram or two. This was a few years ago, so I don't remember the specifics, but we gave him another gram or two to drop in. Um, and And all this, and so then he's going into the medicine. Probably about an hour later, he's unresponsive. And I mean, like, he's just sitting on a sidewalk, just staring down. And I couldn't, like, he's sitting there for over an hour in that exact position. He's not moving. So I'm kind of like, okay, I go over there and I'm trying to talk to him. I'm snapping and, doing some things. I'm trying to give him water and it just is like, you know, spilling everywhere.
That's scary.
It was really scary. And and so then I kind of was like, what do we do? Like, I've never had this happen before. This is really terrifying. And I kind of went and got quiet and got, meditative, listened to my intuition, and it was like, he's okay. He's in a journey. He's okay. You don't need to call the ambulance. I was like, okay. But I'm still like, I have my phone in my hand, right? Because I'm still like, this is a human, and that's the most important thing. Come back, realize he had urinated. And so as we're kind of cleaning him up, a meth pipe falls out of his pocket.
Oh, shoot.
And I was dying. Then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm starting to Google all these things. It just was really super hard. Luckily, his girlfriend was there. And so we were able to get her to come over and kind of start waking him up, and he was more responsive to her. And then later, it was actually a profound experience for him. And he went into some major healing, but he was completely gone from his body, like motor function and all. But that was, that right there told me that I need to put on my intake form, do you use recreational drugs?
Yeah.
Because I hadn't had that on there before and didn't really think, just kind of this arena was different for me than it is for everybody. And so, it was a learning experience and it was pretty terrifying, but made it through, right?
Amazing.
Then there's been a few times actually where I call them kind of like thrashers, where they're just like the most docile human you've ever met in your life. They are so kind, so considerate, just talk very softly and slowly. But then in the medicine, it's like when they finally drop in, usually they fight it for a few hours. And then when they drop in, it was just, I mean, the few times it's just been like screaming and rolling around on the ground and hitting the ground and kicking the ground and trying to hit themselves and for like a couple of hours, like it didn't, they just don't stop. And the only thing I can think of is that all of them had in common deep trauma, really like big T trauma.
Yeah.
And
that's what I've had that one time, and it was the same thing, just the most bubbly, happy person. And she got in it and it was just rage. It was, and we just had to, there was like three of us, three women around her. It was almost like she was giving birth. We were just around her physically and emotionally, just holding this space for her while she just was, raging. It was wild. So I've had that happen, but just one time in all the times I've guided. So.
Well, and it's just an intense situation. It's more intense for you than it is for them. I actually don't really know people that remember it very well. Like
I thought I broke her.
Yeah.
Scared me.
I've never.
And then afterwards, she's like, that was incredible. I'm like,
Was it great?
I'm so glad. All right, I have a couple more questions. Someone's asking, what are your thoughts on using cannabis as the micro as a facilitator?
Yeah, I actually invite cannabis mixed with Blue Lotus into all my ceremonies, and it's an optional thing that people can use if they want. But I just like I'll roll joints beforehand with both of those two medicines together, and cannabis is extremely grounding and can really help that, especially like the drop-in. That can really help people to just calm their nerves and quiet your mind a little bit to just like shut it off to be able to drop in. And then Blue Lotus is a really great heart opening medicine, and it's also a journey medicine, like kind of third eye stuff. So I've found that that's a beautiful mix, and I usually bring that to most of my ceremonies.
And then as a facilitator, have you ever done cannabis instead of mushrooms?
Not like as a professional thing, but I've used cannabis for a very long time and have introduced it to many people. It's great for meditation work. I've done a lot of circles where we've done that kind of stuff with meditation and just going inward and different rituals.
Well, and I know this is about you, but I'm going to speak from my experience, and I have done that before. And because for me, sometimes it's cannabis is that thing that will pick up the personality of any other substance. So, sometimes, and it's easier for me sometimes. So just, I often am sober when I'm guiding, but occasionally if it's a real friend or if Steve's going to be around and I know he can, be our sober person, I will use cannabis for that.
Yeah, and I would just say if you use it regularly, you're probably okay to use it. If you don't, then you don't want to be going to a place where you're not helping out.
Introducing something new, right? In that situation. There's another question asking, do we have thoughts or feedback on the numinous facilitator training? And do you have an answer to that? Because I have my not very good answer, but I'll give one.
I don't know much about it, to be honest with you. Yeah.
I don't, what I know, I don't know specifically about their training. I do know that they are a trusted source in the field right now. And I have some dear friends who work for them and I trust them as well. So I can't speak specifically to the training, but I have not heard any negative reviews or feedback about Numinous to date. So I don't know if that helps, but that's the best answer I can give you. That is also honest. All right. We have a few more minutes. Any other questions that people have? If not, I'm just going to keep asking Sara her thoughts on a few things, and maybe that's working for people, so I can keep doing that. Do you do daytime or nighttime journeys?
Typically, and probably like 99% of the time is I do daytime journeys. And that's because I love my sleep. And so for me, it is nice to start in the morning. Usually, typically, we start at like 8:30 or 9. And then, after their meal and our integration circle or whatever, people are ready to go around 6 o'clock. And then that's enough time for them to feel tired that night, and usually very tired. Usually journeys can make us pretty tired. So I really like the day journeys the most.
I do the same. Just so you know, occasionally will get strong armed into an evening journey, and I just don't like them. I don't think they're as good. Someone's saying, "What about early morning? How early? Earlier than 8 is what she said. I think my earliest I've ever done is 7.
Yeah.
4 a.m.
4 a.m.
Sounds like middle of the night.
Right? That sounds like sunrise, but sunrise can be pretty incredible.
Yeah, it could be.
I didn't feel groups at that time, but I've done it myself many times for sunrise. It's pretty incredible.
So, Philip, I'm going to respond to that to say, in my opinion, part of what I don't want to do as a guide is what Sara mentioned and change people's sleep schedules. I think sometimes that's when, people will have these kind of hangovers from a psychedelic experience. Often that is related to lack of sleep more than anything else. And so if you're working with me, you're looking for a deep journey, and we don't mess with your sleep, which is why I wouldn't start at 4 a.m. I would say, let's do this as 7, 8. I'm working with someone in the next few weeks, and she regularly wakes up at 11 or noon. And so that's when we're going to, we'll probably start around 1 or 2 to not mess up her sleep schedule, even though that's a little inconvenient for me. It's not about me, right? It's about her. So
yeah.
And again, there are plenty of great guides who only do evening experiences. And I'm going to say, Sara, and tell me, I think you agree with me on this. There are a lot of right ways to do this. Sara is talking about what she does. I'm saying, some of the things Sara's talking about, I do a little differently. There's nothing magic about who we are or what we do. We're saying, this is how Sara Call interacts with the medicine, and this is how I interact with the medicine, and here are the things that work for me. So part of what you should do as a guide is do some experimenting, right? If you're getting your own training, work with a group, see what that feels like. See if you can shadow a one-on-one, see what that feels like, and how do you respond? And it's okay to start saying, oh, I really have a good rapport with women. I have a good, that's for women. Men don't. If you have that thought, you shouldn't be guiding. If you are saying, I think I could really help first responders, or I could really, because of my experience, I could really help, kind of find your niche. And fill in the blank is what that line was supposed to be. Who are you? What kind of experience do you have? Who can you hold the best space for? Not everyone's going to fit perfectly in that bubble, but you're going to find more people that are, and then you'll figure out who you are as a guide.
Well, and that's a good segue to, because I like to mention people that have been through the course that do different things, and I love that because I'm a person, people find me for usually a lot of trauma, deep work. But I know somebody that takes people for hikes and they go in hammocks and do a lower dose and just kind of spend the day. Incredible. Somebody that does men's groups, somebody that does women's groups, somebody that does nighttime things, somebody that does camping things. Like, so these are all people that have come and gone through the training, but they're all using it in different ways. And some of them are using it, same with me. They attract people that need a lot of deeper healing. So I think that it really, like, you are what makes it cool. You are the reason why people come to you, right? And so no matter what you do, if you're doing a one-on-one, you get to curate it however they would like and you would like and feel comfortable. But if you're doing a group, people are coming there because of the way that you hold a group space, So just know that being like other people is not the way to do it, because there's room for all of so many different things.
And if you're vibrating on an authentic level, people who match that are going to find you, right? That's one of the first things I do is when I'm talking with people. I'm like, I'm pretty intense. Not everybody's going to like me. And I repel some people. I can see it when we're talking. And I'm like, but that's okay. Tell me what you want and I'll see if I can help you find it. Right. Again, I am not going to gatekeep. I want the thing that is most important to me is that people who are seeking this sacrament can find it in a safe way that feels good to them. And if I'm it, great. Let's have that conversation. If I'm not, let me help you. Let me introduce you to a few people and see if that works. And I feel like the more we do that, the more, Sara listed all of those guys that she's thinking of, the more that's out there, it's actually going to create a community where people really can find what they're looking for, which means they're having good experiences and the circle just will grow because more and more people will feel safe doing this. They'll be hearing testimonials from their friends and family who have great experiences. They're going to start seeing people heal in big ways, and then they'll start to feel more called to it. But because the biggest thing most people feel is a little fear. And as if they're fearful, we have to really be careful that we're not pushing them too fast.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was just going to say one more question from Jen, and then I just want to talk about the retreat just a little bit.
Great.
So Jen says, how much training do you recommend before guiding versus sitting? And I just think it depends on who you are. Like Jen, for example, is a nurse. She probably doesn't need any training. But I think that it just depends on if you know that you can handle most situations, then, maybe you just start guiding friends and see how that goes. If you're going to start taking money for it, I do think that you need to have a little bit of training because we all need to understand how to hold space and integration. We all need to understand how important it is to try to get somebody to talk to you during that intake session so that you can really see what might come up in that space. So I think it's going to be different for every person, but I think the more that you do it for like friends or family, then you'll start feeling more confident of what's coming out of people, or shadowing somebody like Sara said, stuff like that. It makes the difference to just know like, oh, we made it through that. That was a really hard situation. Or, maybe your first time somebody just is like, doesn't move. And so you're kind of like,
oh,
they had a great journey. And then they're like, that was terrifying. And you're like, wait, what? You didn't even go, So I think just kind of knowing yourself and what you can make it through is super important. I think even more than knowing your person is just knowing what you can get through. So
Lovely. Yeah, tell us a little about the your program and then we can wrap up.
Awesome. Yeah, so we have we call it the Guide Training Retreat. My business is Unbound and Free, and it we use the Divine Assemblies online guide course. And so that is like
But anybody can access.
yeah.
Anyone, you find that on the website, but Sara Call uses that in her program.
Yeah, and it's a great program. We've had a lot of incredible feedback on it. And it's kind of a program that gives you what you need, right? Without 8 weeks of fluff. There are so many programs popping up right now that are probably pretty great. But for me, I'm a person that I usually like to jump in with 2 feet to things. And so I don't want an 8 week program, right? That's why I created this the way I did. So we use their online program, which is to be done before people arrive. They can bring all their questions they want with them. And then it's usually a Friday through Sunday. So Friday night is just kind of a night to hang out and get to know each other. You get your room, your space. We usually do a potluck dinner or something together. I think that it is so much easier for us to kind of let our defenses down when we share food together. And so I really love that aspect of the potluck and people coming together. And then the next day we do kind of like the learning portion in that morning. And that's when we go over all the things I think are very important. You know, a lot of it is intake heavy. And then like half of the participants that are there drop into the medicine and the other half guides with me. And so then we spend the rest of the day doing that. And, you know, as people are coming out, we have meals prepared. There's just the food is incredible. You have private accommodations. And then later that night, we'll do like maybe a sound bath or a cacao ceremony, something like that, because I really want it to be a weekend where you get to unplug and there's a lot of self-care going on. There's a lot of connection going on. So we really encourage people to leave their devices in their room and really just try to unplug for the weekend if they can. And then the next day we switch and so you can like the other half of the people guide with me while the other half go in and say, you know, and then the day is the same thing. We start earlier that morning and then people are ready to go that night between like 6 and 8 p.m. just depending on what's going on. So if that is something that is speaking to you, I would love to have you there. Our next dates are July 25th through 27th, and we still have a couple spots left.
I put the link in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Let me see. I've got I was gonna say I'm gonna do put this other link in there because if this isn't for you and you just kind of want to follow along, there's my Instagram link. And so if you want, you know, that's where I post all the dates and different things. And so I would love to have you just if it speaks to you at some point and you feel like doing that, I would be happy to talk to you anytime about it. Really, it's the most incredible thing is the connection and the hands-on experience. I think that what most people are afraid of is, you know, actually going out that day and they're alone. They're by themselves for the first time. And a lot of things might pop up and it might not be, you know, appropriate to use your phone at a certain point when somebody's going through a hard time or something. And so that hands-on experience has been really beneficial for people. And I love it. These weekends have been such an incredible journey for us. So
that's awesome. Okay, I think we're gonna wrap up. Thank you everybody for participating. Thank you for being here. I hope to see you next week and all the weeks after that. If you're not interested in hosting one of these, but there's a topic that's interesting to you that you want me to find somebody to kind of lead a discussion, I'd love to see that. Throw that in the chat as well or email, you know, at any point. But thank you all. This has been a fun discussion. Sara, thank you for being here.
yeah.
Just such a joy. And we just appreciate everything you're doing for TDA and for this community. So thanks, everybody. Have a good night and watch for links if you want to see any of this again.